that uncomfortable with that pad. Want to try to
No, vegetables and fruits for about 40 years. And of those 40 years, I have spent almost 30 years with raised beds. So let's get started on our morning adventure. See if I can click this. Okay, and you're asking, what is a master gardener? Well, a master gardener extends research-based information to home gardeners so that they can make informed gardening decisions. And where can you find us? You can find us on media. We have a hotline number, which is answered by master gardeners, so we can get your garden questions. We have an awesome website that has many links to different places to get questions answered. We're on social media. We're in the newspaper occasionally. We have a quarterly newsletter. And most important is our annual garden guide and calendar. This is tells you what to do in the garden by month and is the source of revenue that is keeping our program going this year. So let's get it moving. Why a garden? Well, during the last few months, there's been an increased number of folks wanting to grow their own food. And by growing your own food, you know where it was grown, how it was grown, and you know that it's going to be fresh. You can try some new varieties that maybe you can't find in a grocery store, like rainbow carrots. And because families are spending so much more time together, this is a great family project. And also, it can be an outdoor science lab for those involved in distance learning. And you know what? Playing in the soil can just be fun. So before we get started, let's have a goal in mind. What's your plan? Are you an experienced gardener or are you just getting started and you just want a few vegetables? Well, start with one small bed. Have you been doing this a while and you want to transition and expand from in-ground gardening to some raised beds? Well, make a plan and see where it's going to fit in your landscape. Are you planning to become an urban homesteader and grow all your own food? Well, I kind of fit into this category. I am an urban homesteader, and minus the chickens, of course, but I just didn't jump into this overnight. It's been years of planning and research and some trial and error. And wherever you're at in gardening, having a plan will only add to the success and the fun of your gardening experience. So, why consider raised beds? Well, they can maximize your growing opportunity if you have limited growing space, poor soil, or mobility issues. Plants can be placed a little bit closer together and they're tidy. You can make nice, tidy landscape, especially if you have those icky CC&R regulations. And in spring, you can start your gardening earlier because your soil will warm up faster. So let's take a look at some of the advantages. Now, if you have a place like this isn't weeds. This is habitat for beneficial insects. But you do have to cut it down to the ground and lay out your garden bed. The garden soil here is very rocky and very clayey. So this is the perfect area for a garden bed. But one of the disadvantages is they can be expensive due to startup costs and materials. So let's take another. Extends the growing season. Soil warms up faster in the spring, so you can get plants and seeds into the ground earlier. Beds can be covered to protect from winter frost and pests like cabbage lupins and aphids. For example, this metal bed right here is covered with a product called Row Cover. It's a light woven fabric, and it lets air circulate through, lets the sunlight in, but it protects your crops from insects, and it can also help to protect your crops against torrential rains, should we ever get any. Another thing is during the hottest months of summer, you can use shade cloth to protect some of your vegetables. Some things like bell peppers can easily get sunburned, and a little bit of shade cloth is much appreciated. They can produce higher yields. Better root growth comes from improved soil conditions, and your ornamentals will have lusher growth. You can be grown in a smaller area than conventional areas where you don't have to have a row of veg and then a row in between, a row of veg and a row in between. You're eliminating that so you can take and you can grow these 6 tomato plants all together in one spot without having to have rows in between. No space is wasted, and you don't get the soil compaction. Another reason is they're attractive. I really like these beds here. There's the little one here in the middle of the star. This person's gone through a lot of work to make this a beautiful centerpiece of their garden. This one here, the gardener has gone through and done some dovetailing on the ends. And this one over here in this corner down here, these corner pieces are pieces of iron that have been laser cut. And then you just slide the slats of wood into the corner pieces and you have raised beds. Sometimes these things are also sold in kits. Raised beds can also be accessible. They can be built to meet various needs. Like the taller beds in the pictures here can be great for people that have difficulty bending or kneeling. And like this picture here, they can even be fashioned for someone in a wheelchair. So let's get started. Let your imagination run wild. You can use wood, bricks, block, metal, but avoid using any pressure-treated wood that's been treated with arsenic, and at all costs, avoid using railroad ties. They have been treated with creosote, and that stuff can leach into your soil. You want to make sure that you have at least a 3 to 4 feet wide bed. You want to be able to no wider because you want to be able to reach the middle of it when you're working. You want to be able to get to it from either side of the bed. Now, the depth of the bed is personal, but plants are going to need 6 to 12 inches of the rooting zone. So a little deeper wouldn't hurt. Leave enough space in between your beds for a wheelbarrow. And if you're planning one really long bed, like a 50-foot bed, take and break it up into 2 smaller beds. Easier to manage. And you may want to consider putting a ledge around the top of your bed But sometimes it's nice to be able just to sit on the ledge of the raised bed and put things in the garden. And we're going to talk about one more thing that's an option for raised beds, and that is hardware cloth. Now, you can see it's not really cloth. It's a galvanized mesh metal. And if you live someplace where you have gophers and moles and things that like to burrow in the ground and come up into your beds and eat your crops, this is great. You're going to want to secure it on the inside of your bed, all the way around the inside perimeter of your bed. Make sure it's secured on there, because those little blighters can find the smallest hole to get into. Let's take a look at some design ideas. When you're using things like pallets and reclaimed wood, know your source. Let's make sure that they have not been chemically treated. And let's move on. Here, this person right here has used some natural wood to make a nice rustic looking garden bed in their property. Pallets make really nice garden beds. You can really dress up a patio with a raised bed, like this person has done here with bricks. They've made this beautiful corner bed with some bricks, and it has added a interest piece to this patio. These are done with reclaimed wood. In fact, this was built by one of our fellow master gardeners, and she used recycled split rails. They were done with the old split rail fence, so they took it apart, saved the wood, and built some really beautiful raised beds with that. Let's talk water. Water is, of course, one of the essential parts of having a garden and a raised bed. One of the things is drip irrigation in a raised bed is really a great way to go. As you can see, this is one of my raised beds, and I have an inline drip emitters in my bed. You can also use individual emitters. You can use soaker hose. You can use hand watering, but do you really want to walk the hose all the way around? One great thing about using drip irrigation is it prevents the foliage of the plants from getting wet, which can help prevent powdery mildew and certain fungal diseases. And our winters are very mild, so quite often we do have to irrigate in the winter. So drip irrigation is a great way to go. Let's take a look at some examples. Here's some examples of drip irrigation. This is a quarter line inline drip and a half line inline drip. What it is inside the line is a drip emitter, and it puts out a measured amount of water, and it's usually rated in gallons per hour. This half-inch line inline emitter, I have to use the half-inch. I have quite large raised beds, and I happen to really like this. You can use individual emitters. These individual emitters here, they come color-coded depending on how many gallons per hour they put out. And some plants will need more water, some plants will need less water. That way you can customize your watering in your bed to your plant's needs. And this last one down here, this is the soaker hose. You can get them in half-inch, but this is a quarter-inch soaker hose. And what it has is it has all these little laser microscopic holes in it. And it sits right at the ground level, and it just kind of oozes out. I don't think they have a measured amount of water, that they ooze out and they water right at the ground level. And that's a fantastic part of any of these types of drip. They water where it's needed, at the base of the plant, next to the soil. So you're not losing a bunch of water to evaporation. Let's talk about size and spacing. Start by making a layout sketch of your garden area. Will really help you in knowing what to buy, how much to buy, and save you 950 trips to the box store. So start with making a sketch. What is it that you want? What will fit in your yard? But when you're planning your beds, remember the rule, 3 to 4 feet wide to allow you access to the center of the bed. And also, when you're making your sketch, you need to make sure that you notate where your water sources are going to be. Also, where the sun is. The sun is really important. You want your beds to be facing an east-west direction. So you can go out early in the morning. Where does the sun come up in your yard? Kind of where is it at noon? Where does it go down? And mark that on your map also, so you know how to make your beds face. So when that sun is coming across the sky, where are your vegetables going to get the most sun? And the spacing between your beds is important too. Make sure you plan to put at least 3 feet between each bed. It allows you to walk through easily for harvesting and also allow you to get a wheelbarrow in between. Here's a sample layout. This is very easy to use. On this, I know that it is my east-west layout. I know where my sun is going to go, how my beds are going to be placed. I've notated my water on here. And then after you've built your raised beds, you can keep this plan and you can use it to notate what you're going to plant in each of your beds. And you can use it year after year to make sure you're doing proper crop rotations. Now we come to the most important part of a raised bed, and that's your soil. Make sure you purchase a good quality soil, a topsoil blend or raised bed mix. If you're building a large bed, or if you're building more than one bed, you may want to consider buying your soil in bulk. Go and look at the soil. And different companies offer different types of soil. Take a chance, pick it up in your hand, smell it. It should have a nice earthy smell to it. It shouldn't be too sandy, it shouldn't be too clayey. It should have just a nice feel and a nice smell to it. The soil in a raised bed must be amended every year after every growing season. So if you've finished your summer crop, you're getting ready to go into your winter crop. You're going to want to apply 3 to 4 inches or more of good compost on that bed. Work it into the bed, because raised beds are essentially a gigantic container and they lose their nutrients down past the root level. Just like containers do, the nutrients run out. So we need to make sure that we rejuvenate that soil after each planting season. We need to care for the soil, and I'm sure you've heard this term, feed the soil. And that's basically what we're doing by adding organic material and compost into the soil. Take a look at this little inset right here. Our soil is full of so many wonderful critters. You know, there's large critters like gophers and moles. I know they're pests, but they feed on some of the worms and some of the bigger critters there. And those critters feed on the fungi and the microbes in the soil. And other critters feed on the fungi. And they all are eating each other. And they're all pooping in there. And they're creating this whole soil food web, each part playing its own specific role, and it all is a part of having good, healthy soil. What they're doing is they're creating a soil that your plants can use right away. The roots will grow into this and they'll say, oh, yum, I'm ready, let's go. So you're creating soil, you're feeding the soil, you're keeping it healthy. And if you keep your soil healthy, your plants will thank you and you will be a happy gardener. And remember, after every growing season, rejuvenate those beds. If how much soil? You need to rejuvenate with 3 to 4 inches of compost. Compost feeds the soil, it puts the microbes and the bacteria and the fungi and all that good stuff into your soil. But sometimes, and especially in the winter, we just don't want to plant a garden in the winter. You may be traveling, and I've done that a couple of times where I've traveled in the winter and I didn't want to have a garden. I didn't want to have my garden sitter come. So I planted a cover crop, and it's also known as green manure. My favorite is a blend of peas, beans, and vetch, which are all legumes. And I just scatter the seed, I water them until the rains come, and then they grow into this nice, thick matter here. And it's protecting the soil against pounding rains. And it's growing up. What it's doing is something really important to the soil. It's taking the nitrogen from the air and putting it into the soil. But what I'm going to do is just before these things bloom, is I'm going to take and I'm going to cut them down. I'm going to take my weed eater and I'm going to chop all of this down. And then I'm going to take my spading fork and I'm going to mix it all into the soil. And I'm going to do this at least 3 weeks before I want to plant. And then I'm going to put a little bit of compost on it. I'm going to give this time to break down and add nitrogen and keep going and make a healthy soil layer. And these plants require very little attention. You don't have to do anything with them except in the dry winters to keep them a little bit of water. And, you know, if you didn't want to do that, whatever you do, don't let your soil sit fallow. It can damage the soil surface and down in the soil. Place some cardboard on top, some shredded newspaper, leaves. We're going to be coming into leaf season here very shortly. Take and pile a whole bunch of leaves on top of your bed. They will start to break down. They'll add some interesting microbes into your soil. Just don't let your soil sit bare. Add something to it. Feed the soil even if you're not planting. One thing you do need to do if you're building your raised beds is you got to know the maths. So here's the maths. When you're figuring out how to fill up that bed, you need to figure out the volume of your bed. This is my new bed that I'm adding this year. It is 4 feet wide, 2 feet tall, and 10 feet long. So the volume of this bed is 80 cubic feet. And from having done raised bed gardening for so many years, I know that 1 yard of soil, which is how it's sold bulk, is equal to 27 cubic feet. Easy math. I'll need to buy at least 3 yards of soil to fill the bed and then have a little left over for some other projects. Easy to do, simple, but are you ready to put the soil in yet? Almost. What you want to do before you put your soil in, and this is really important, is to take and loosen the soil at the bottom. Once you put the bed in place and you've gotten everything just right, you're going to take a spading fork or a shovel and just loosen the ground up. You're not digging out holes. You're just loosening the soil so as the water drains, it's draining back down into the ground. We want to try to keep as much water as we can draining back down into our groundwater. So you're going to do that. You're going to fill it up and add your water lines. So what comes next? You make another plan. You make a plan of what you want to grow and what will fit in your area. Start small. Start small. If you are new to gardening, start small. Make a plan. Some crops in the winter, like broccoli and spinach, will keep producing after you've cut off. They're the plant that keeps on giving. As were like cauliflower and cabbages, they're one-hit wonders. Once you cut it off, you're done. So what are you going to get the most bang for your buck from in the space that you have? Also think about, what will your family eat? It might be, you may want to try something weird like kohlrabi, these alien looking bulbous vegetables. Try one new thing, and if it doesn't work out, you're not out of a lot. But don't plant a whole bunch of stuff, and don't plant things that your family doesn't like, because it's not going to get eaten. So it's fun to try new things, but try one at a time. Decide if you want to buy plants or you want to start from the seed. Either way, it's fine. When you're buying plants from a nursery or a home store, take a look at the plant really well. If it looks healthy, it has its true leaves, it's got enough, that means it's what the plant actually looks like. It's got more than 2 little tiny leaves on it. Look at that. Look at the bottom of a lot of them come in 6-packs. Look at the bottom. Are the roots running out the bottom? Are they all packed up? Take time to turn that plant over. Look under the leaves, because that's where the insects live. And if you've got a plant that's kind of looking like it's got a little bit of an infestation, don't buy it. If you see a plant that you say, I think I can help this out, I can rejuvenate this, leave it there. Plants are expensive. Buy the best ones you can and plant those in your yard. And you know what? If you're not sure what to plant, you can get a copy of our Placer County Vegetable Planting Guide for free on our website. You can print it out in color, laminate it, put it in your folder, and you will have a valuable tool that tells you when to plant seed, when to plant transplants, when to harvest. It's a valuable tool. And if you don't live in Placer County, but if you live in Sacramento County or Amador County, some other counties that have a climate zone similar to ours, this can help. So my last word of advice is enjoy the process. Have fun. Make it an adventure and have fun. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. And if you have questions, the moderator will help with your questions, and I'm more than happy to answer them. And get out there and grow something.
Here we go. Sorry, I had myself muted. The first question that came through was, can I use old tires as a raised bed?
Oh, that's a great question. As master gardeners, we don't recommend using any tires for any kind of beds at all. Even though they're old, they still tend to have toxins and stuff in it that can leach into the soil of the bed. So I would say no.
Thank you. Second question, how often should I schedule my water to run during the summer?
That depends. You know, how many emitters do you have? What kind of set? How many gallons per hour is your emitters putting out? There's a lot of, it depends on, you know, how have you mulched your beds? If you've put out a lot of mulch around your plants, you're probably not going to need to water as often. And you can always check on our website to see what kind of watering needs are necessary.
Okay. Next question, have you heard anything about the concrete blocks leaking their irrigation water?
No, I have not.
Okay. The next question is, how do you keep grass out of your raised bed?
How do I keep what?
Grass out of your raised bed.
I just pull it. If I get grass, I don't get a lot of weeds in my raised bed, but if I get the occasional weed that the birds have brought in, I just pull it out as I see it.
Would mulch help in that instance?
Oh, you bet, Becky. Mulch always helps to keep things out of weeds and stuff at bay.
And the last question to come through is, how do I keep cats out of my bed?
I bet you my mother asked that question.
No.
Keeping it covered with a row cover will kind of help discourage them. Just kind of being on guard. Get a dog. But seriously, putting things like wire mesh in your bed, because the cats don't like to scratch that. Using a product called Scarecrow. It's a watering device that is motion detected, and as soon as it sees somebody come from anywhere, it squirts. Somebody popped up on my screen is they found that burlap helps, and I've not tried that yet. So, and sharp sticks. Somebody else posted sharp sticks.
Oh. Well, thank you very much, Kathy, for your presentation today. And I'd like to thank all the attendees. Please check our website for this to be posted as it was recorded. And also you'll find handouts on our website regarding this topic. So thank you very much. And we hope to see you all again.
Last slide said PDF.
Becky.